All right. Let us know if we're live.
We are.
All right. Hello everybody. Welcome to a special presentation of 2K Universe. This has been one we've been waiting to do for quite a while, but welcome to college basketball season. It's already started by this point. We want to get this out early November, but scheduling conflicts got in the way. But now we're going to take you on a little walk through the 2K Universe's college basketball sphere for this 2022-23 season. I don't know if we're not going to be streaming as often as we did the college football season. However, we will have occasional streams in college basketball leading up to the tournament, which we'll be doing most likely in a similar fashion to the way we do the radio streams that we're going to do this weekend. Don't forget to tune into those for the college football conference championships on Friday and Saturday. Stay tuned on that. But Danny, any thoughts you want to get out about college basketball before we get started?
Yeah, that basketball is always going to be a fun time. So many teams, so many conferences, so many games. So it's always fun to see, and there's always going to be something crazy that happens every week in basketball. So
If
glad to see this all happen.
if you thought our college realignments for the FB for the FBS in college football were crazy, you haven't seen anything yet. We've got we've got plenty of conferences here. I believe 40 is the number when I last checked of in terms of total conferences, but I might be wrong. It actually might be 32. I'm not sure, but we'll see. Anyone taking tally will probably check it out. Something we've done for the NCAA's Division One is if you're a member in of Division One in any sport, you're a full-on member here. Such teams such as Michigan Tech or Ferris State are members in hockey. We put them as members in other sports as well. It'll create some interesting dynamics and expand the college sports sphere, which I'm very proud of. But let's get started. We'll start with a familiar conference to most, the ACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference, similar to, in fact, identical to its look in college football. Clemson, Duke, Florida State, Maryland, Miami, North Carolina, NC State, South Carolina, Virginia, Virginia Tech, and Wake Forest. The ACC tournament is held at Greensboro Coliseum in Greensboro, North Carolina. Unlike last time, we do have a lot more context here. We have the reigning regular season champion for the ACC, that being the Duke Blue Devils. The tournament champion ended up being the Virginia Cavaliers. The favorites this season are looking to be teams like Duke, Virginia, North Carolina, and Maryland. My pin is on the Cavaliers to repeat as tournament champions. You got a favorite here, Danny?
I think I'm going to go with North Forest, and there have been a lot of times when they're able to break through, and I think maybe this time it'll be North Carolina's time.
I see. We can move on now to the America East, a smaller conference, who has a change in their structure this season. We had some changes from the 2KU tournament we did last year off camera before this channel started. The new teams to the conference are in italics. The new teams to Division One are highlighted. Here we have the Albany Great Danes, Binghamton Bearcats, the Boston University Terriers, the Hartford Hawks, the Maine Black Bears, the UMass Lowell Riverhawks, the UMBC Retrievers, new from the NEC this season, the Merrimack Warriors, new to the AEC as well this season is the Millersville Marauders from Division Two, the New Hampshire Wildcats, the NJIT Highlanders, the Northeastern Huskies, the Stony Brook Seawolves, and the Vermont Catamounts. The reigning regular season champion was UMBC. The tournament champion, who made their first ever appearance in the NCAA tournament last season, was the Binghamton Bearcats. The favorites this season for the conference title are UMBC, Vermont, Albany, and Binghamton. The tournament is in Dunkin' Donuts Center in Providence. My favorite for the tournament this season is most likely going to be Vermont. They have always performed very well. They're historically one of the best teams in this conference, and I think that they have plenty of momentum behind them and some great talent in order to capture that top spot. Danny?
I think for me it's going to be UMBC. They seem pretty interesting. They're they always got like some kind of crazy wild card to them. So I definitely do think they might be able to sneak their way up through the rankings a bit.
Pardon if I'm a little quiet. It is pretty late while we're recording this at the moment, but we'll take a move on now to the Atlantic Sun. Personally, one of my favorite conferences in college basketball. 2021, the reigning regular season and tournament champions were Florida Gulf Coast, but we have a lot of shakeup in this conference. The loss of Northern Kentucky, they've moved to the Horizon League. However, that brings in 3 new members into the fray from Division Two. We'll start up top. Alabama Huntsville Chargers lead us off. The Bellarmine Knights. The Dave Show Truckers are the third member here. We'll talk about them in depth a little later. Florida Gulf Coast, Jacksonville, Kennesaw State, Lipscomb, Mercer, North Florida, Nova Southeastern, Palm Beach, Atlantic, and Tampa are 3 new members from Division Two, joined alongside Stetson and USC Upstate. Right, the conference tournament is in the Pensacola Bay Center in Pensacola, Florida, moved from Amalie Arena, which hosted it last season. The favorites this season are Florida Gulf Coast, Jacksonville, and Lipscomb, as well as Dave Show, who has been hard at work trying to capture their first ASUN title and their first tournament bid since 1996. My favorite this season, though, is going to be Jacksonville. Florida Gulf Coast lost some big names to the draft last season. I think that might affect them pretty harshly. Their head coach as well moved on. He got hired at Iowa State. The Dolphins look like the best all-around team in the conference this season, but watch out for a team like Lipscomb as well. Danny?
Give me the Truckers. They are really hungry for the title. They really want to get their foot into the basketball world. So I think Dave Show might finally push over the edge and get themselves their first championship.
We'll move on now to the Atlantic 10 Conference, a semi-power conference. Here we have the Charlotte 49ers, Dayton Flyers, Duquesne Dukes, the Fordham Rams, the George Washington Colonials, the LaSalle Explorers, the UMass Minutemen, Rhode Island Rams, St. Bonaventure Bonnies, the St. Joseph's Hawks, the Temple Owls, and the Xavier Musketeers. The Owls were the reigning regular season and tournament champions, having an amazing season last year. The favorites this season are the Owls, along with Xavier, UMass, and Dayton. The Musketeers are perennially one of the best teams in this conference, though I think the Owls might eventually usurp them. I like the Temple Owls to repeat as A10 champions. Danny?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with actually Xavier. Xavier, they are hungry. I'm sure they want to get some revenge against Temple. I'm sure Xavier they might be the ones to push over the edge and knock off the Owls.
We'll move on from here. I also, before I do, want to mention UMass, who had an amazing Sweet 16 underdog story last year. We'll move on to the Big East Conference, the perennial best team. It's the perennial biggest spot in all of college basketball, which has 2 new members this season. DePaul and Marquette became full-on members this year after leaving the Conference USA. They'll be joining the Boston College Eagles, the UConn Huskies, Georgetown Hoyas, the Pittsburgh Panthers, the Providence Friars, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, the St. John's Red Storm, Seton Hall Pirates, the Syracuse Orange, the Villanova Wildcats, and the West Virginia Mountaineers. The reigning regular season and tournament champions were the Syracuse Orange. The Orange came so close to a national championship last season, but they fell short in the title game to VCU. The tournament favorites this year for the Big East, of course, the Big East plays their titles in Madison Square Garden. I forgot to mention the last one, the A10, it plays theirs in Philadelphia. But the Big East favorites this year are Syracuse, UConn, Villanova, and Seton Hall. I like Syracuse. They're probably going to be a dominant force all year, but I think I like what I'm seeing from Seton Hall to be a dark horse and steal this conference in the tournament. Danny?
Give me the Huskies to continue their role as kind of a bit of a disruptor. UConn's always had a good history of knocking off top teams, especially teams like Syracuse and Villanova. So I think maybe this year they might be the ones to get themselves over the edge and beat both the Orange and Villanova as well, the Wildcat.
Mm-hmm. We'll move on now to the Big Sky Conference, which benefited from a huge shakeup elsewhere. The the Big Sky made up of Alaska Anchorage, Alaska Fairbanks, uh, Eastern Washington, Idaho State, Montana State Billings, Northern Arizona, Northern Colorado, Southern Utah, and Weber State. The new members being Colorado Mesa, Colorado State Pueblo, and the team formerly known as Dixie State, now known as Utah Tech. All three coming from the Great West Conference, which we'll talk about. The reigning regular season champion was Idaho State, but they had their tournament slot stolen from them by Northern Colorado. The current favorites this season are perennial dominant teams Montana and Weber State, as well as Idaho State and Northern Colorado from last year. I think the best team in the conference is going to be Weber State. I think that even in spite of them being at the back of the favorites there, they have a lot to prove. They're one of the best shooting teams in the Big Sky, and they've been very good at picking apart tough defenses. Another thing before Danny you continue, of course you remember that Montana, Eastern Washington, and Southern Utah announced full membership to the Mountain West. They rescinded that before the basketball season this year, and now they have remained only affiliate members. Their future in Big Sky or in Mountain West football is still up in the air. Danny, your thoughts on the Big Sky? Danny?
Sorry, you cut out there, but for me, I think the winners of this one might be Idaho State.
Uh-huh.
Idaho State, they are very well, they are quite well rounded, and they were the regular season champions last season. So I think they might be able to.
Hmm. What I was saying, if I cut out, was about Montana, Eastern Washington, and Southern Utah. As I said before, they pledged to join the Mountain West in all sports. However, they only are football affiliates as of now. Whether they even stay in that conference is still up in the air. But the Big Sky, but while I'm talking about the Big Sky before I leave, the Big Sky tournament is at Vivid Arena in Salt Lake City, Utah. We'll move on here to the Big South Conference, which had some new teams and some teams leaving. The biggest loss would be Coastal Carolina and Liberty, both teams departing elsewhere. The conference added a few new members, which we'll get to. The conference starts out with some teams that were Division I members before, but dropped out, those being Armstrong State and Augusta State. Much like college football, every single team who was a D1 member from 78 to present is here. We have Armstrong State, Augusta State, the Fighting Camels, Charleston Southern, Gardner Webb, High Point, Longwood, Newberry, UNC Asheville, Presbyterian, Queens of North Carolina, Radford, and Winthrop. Queens and Newberry are new members from Division II this season. And the regular season champion was UNC Asheville, but we had a huge underdog story in the Big South, the Longwood Lancers becoming the lowest seed in Big South history to ever make the NCAA tournament in their first ever bid as well. The favorites this season are Winthrop, Longwood, Gardner Webb, and UNC Asheville. The conference tournament is held at North Charleston Coliseum. My favorite here is going to be Gardner Webb. They have improved quite a bit from a very disappointing outing last year. I think that they get the job done and finally return to the NCAA tournament. Danny?
Yeah, for me, I think the winner of this one might be. I think this one might be UNC Asheville. I think they have a very good shot. They are always a. The North Carolina schools are always really strong, so I think UNC Asheville might do a little rerun.
Mm-hmm. All right, we will move on from there to the Big Ten Conference. Of course, most people know who this is. As you'd remember from the college football vid, it's still Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Michigan State, Minnesota, Northwestern, Ohio State, Penn State, Purdue, and Wisconsin, joined by Notre Dame since 2011. The reigning regular season champion was Indiana. The conference tournament champion ended up being Illinois. Both teams had what you would what they would consider disappointing performances. Both made it to the Elite Eight, but couldn't get. Or pardon me, both made it to the Sweet 16, but were projected to go much further. The favorites this season are Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Michigan State to take home the conference championship. But really, the Big Ten is very competitive. I could see any of these teams having a realistic shot of swooping in and stealing the title in Indianapolis. I think my favorite team here is most likely the Hoosiers. I think that they can rebound and pick up another conference tournament win, but don't be surprised if Michigan State is the one who takes it home. Danny?
As much as I would love to cheer for my Badgers, I think I'm gonna go with the Fighting Illini. They they are the tournament champions. They are always performing well in the regular season, so I think maybe this time they'll become the regular season champions.
We'll move on here to the Big 12 conference. Once again, very similar to college football. Baylor, Colorado, Iowa State, Kansas State, Missouri, Nebraska, Oklahoma State, Texas A&M, and Texas Tech. The reigning regular season and tournament champions were the Missouri Tigers, who played in the Final Four, losing to the national champion Rams of VCU. The Big 12 championship game is in Chesapeake Energy Arena in Oklahoma City. The favorites this season are Missouri, Kansas, Baylor, and Oklahoma. And really, you can't root against Kansas if you're trying to look at the favorite team to win the Big 12. They're every single year one of the most dominant forces in college football. Even last year, where they didn't have as much of a huge presence, that was mainly helped by a stunning first round loss to the Binghamton Bearcats. However, the Jayhawks have been known to rebound from adversity, and I think they pull it together here. Danny?
Yeah, for me, I think I'm gonna go with Kansas. Kansas is always really good. They're always one of the best teams in college football. So I think this time they'll beat their border war rivals of Missouri.
Mm-hmm. We'll move on now to the Big West Conference with a new look this season, and some new teams as well. The Big West will be adding Azusa Pacific and San Francisco State from Division II. They'll be joining the main members Cal Baptist, Cal Poly, Cal State Fullerton, CSU Northridge, Long Beach State, Sacramento State, UC Davis, UC Irvine, UC Riverside, UC San Diego, UC Santa Barbara, and US International. Fans of the Taipei Joy 101 main channel will remember that name. The reigning regular season champions are Long Beach State. The reigning conference champions are no longer in the conference. Cal State Bakersfield left for an invitation to join the WAC this season. The current favorites for the championship right now are Long Beach State, CSU Fullerton, UC Irvine, and UC Santa Barbara. My favorite in this category, I think, is going to be Long Beach State. The big thorn in their side was Bakersfield, and now that they're gone, now the Sharks will be a favorite in the Honda Center at Anaheim, where the Big West tournament is. Danny?
Yeah, I'm also going to agree with you. Long Beach State, they're probably going to be the one to win this conference. I mean, Cal State Bakersfield, they are gone, so therefore Long Beach is now technically now the current front runner. So I think they'll continue up that legacy.
Mm-hmm. Take a move on now to the Colonial Athletic Association, now boasting a national champion. And the Virginia Commonwealth Rams, the reigning regular season and tournament champions, they would go all the way to the Natty and take down Syracuse. Here, the CAA is basically another mini power, much like the A10. In the conference, we have Delaware, Drexel, Elon, Georgia Mason, Georgia State, Hofstra, James Madison, UNC Wilmington, Old Dominion, Richmond, Towson, and the reigning champions VCU. The favorites this year are, of course, VCU, George Mason, UNC Wilmington, and Drexel are the top four. I like the Rams to repeat once again. I think that their offense is just too strong. Their defense is just unmatched in college basketball. It was able to completely shut down Syracuse last time. I think they pull it off I think they pull it off again to take another CAA crown at Richmond Coliseum. Danny.
Yeah, I think VCU will do a rerun again, and I think they will definitely be a good team in here.
All right, we'll move on now to the next conference, the Conference USA, which announced two new members joining next season. Those will be the ones uh, replacing DePaul and Marquette, who left for the Big East. Those being Liberty and of course Tulsa. This conference already has plenty of powerful teams. The Memphis Tigers were the reigning regular season champions. The reigning tournament champions are Louisville. Both teams made the NCAA tournament. The current field for the conference is Alabama, Birmingham, Arkansas, Central Florida, Cincinnati, East Carolina, Houston, Louisville, Memphis, Rice, SMU, USF, and Southern Miss. The Conference USA Championship is in FedEx Forum. The favorites, of course, the Common Core of Memphis, Louisville, Houston, and Arkansas. My favorite team here is not Memphis or Louisville, though. I'm liking the Razorbacks to pull off a great performance in the tournament, especially with how disappointing their football counterparts have been this season. I think that the basketball team's going to have to pick up the slack. Danny?
As much as I would love to cheer for my Knights, I know they're probably gonna be somewhere in the middle, but for me, I'm gonna actually pick the winners to probably be Houston. Houston, they're kind of like a dark horse here. No one's not really looking at them too much, but they have a lot of talent. They have a lot of skill, and they do have the history of winning big. So I think they'll win here.
Houston was Houston was a great performer in the NIT last season. We'll have to see how they do this year. The ECAC, a new conference added to added for certain schools that I couldn't find a place for in the America East or the NEC. These include the Bentley Falcons, Boston State Warriors, Franklin Pierce Ravens, the Hobart Statesmen, the RPI Engineers, the RIT Tigers, the Post Eagles, the St. Anselm Hawks, the St. Lawrence Saints, the St. Michael's Purple Knights, the Stonehill Skyhawks, the Union Dutchmen, and the Westchester Rams. The reigning regular season champions were St. Michael's. However, they were prevented from their first ever tournament bid by falling in the championship game to Bentley. The Falcons took it last year. The 22 championship favorites are St. Michael's and Bentley, along with Union and Boston State. My favorite team here is likely St. Michael's. I think that they get their act together and make their first ever tournament. Danny?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Bentley. I think Bentley might be a really good team. They're gonna be probably the winner, or they're gonna be competing well in this conference, and I think they might take it.
Mm-hmm. The conference tournament is in CEFSU Arena in Albany, New York. We'll move on to the GLIAC, another case much like the ECAC. This conference was moved up from Division 2. Here we have the Bemidji State Beavers, the Ferris State Bulldogs, the Findlay Oilers, the Grand Valley State Lakers, Hillsdale Chargers, Michigan Tech Huskies, the Minnesota Crookston Golden Eagles, the Minnesota Duluth Bulldogs, Minnesota State Mavericks, the Northern Michigan Wildcats, the Saginaw Valley State Cardinals, the St. Cloud State Huskies, and the Wayne State Warriors. The regular season champion was Wayne State. The reigning tournament champion is Northern Michigan. The 22 championship favorites this season are Wayne State, Northern Michigan, joined by Ferris State and Bemidji State. I like the Warriors to return to the championship after falling to the Wildcats last season. Give me Wayne State, Danny.
I'm gonna agree with you. Wayne State, they should be able to return this year and might be able to win out this conference. We gotta really see how they fare up, but I do think Wayne State will make it.
The GLIAC tournament is at Van Andel Arena in Grand Rapids, Michigan. We'll move on now to the Great West Conference, which is in a bit of a transition period. They lost a lot of key members last year, and certain members of the conference now have expressed interest in moving elsewhere. We'll have to see what the future holds for the Great West, which has been a D1 conference since 2008. The current members are Colorado College, Grand Canyon, Houston Baptist, Oklahoma City, Texas Pan American, Utah Valley, and UTRGV. By the way, both of the when we have a brand with a merger or a much like UTRGV or LIU will have two separate schools, one representing one half and one the other. The reigning regular season champions in the Great West are Grand Canyon. The tournament champions are Utah Valley. Both of those teams have been the dominant forces by a long shot in the Great West in the recent years. However, UTPA and UTRGV have popped up at times. Of course, there was UTRGV's unprecedented run in the tournament in 2015, in only their second year in Division One. I like the Antelopes to return to the NCAA tournament, though. Danny?
I'm gonna go with Utah Valley. Utah Valley, they are still a pretty good team. They are looking for a lot of great momentum, and I think they're definitely going to be. I think they're going to compete here well.
Mm-hmm. The NCAA tournament last year, they did give the Creighton Blue Jays all that they could handle in the first round. The Great West tournament has moved around in recent years. It was in Oklahoma City to start, then it moved to Kansas City. Now it's in Austin, Texas for the last two seasons. It was played at Texas's arena last year. It's at the new one this year at Moody Center in Austin. We'll move on to the Horizon League, my home conference, of course. The conference is made up of Cleveland State, Chicago University, Detroit Mercy, Illinois Chicago, IPFW, IUPUI, Northern Kentucky, the Oakland Golden Grizzlies. Northern Kentucky, by the way, is new. Valparaiso, Wisconsin Green Bay, Wisconsin Milwaukee, and Wright State. The reigning regular season champions are Wright State. They had a dominant performance the year before, but the tournament champion this year in an upset was IUPUI, capturing their first Horizon League title since joining the conference. The favorites this season are Wright State, Oakland, Valparaiso, and Detroit Mercy. I like the Raiders to return to the tournament. Danny?
Give me IUPUI. Give me the Jaguars to maybe do a run with this. I think they're going to be really good. I think they're going to maybe win out this conference and beat out Wright State.
Mm-hmm. The tournament, of course, is the Motor City Madness in Little Caesars Arena. We'll move on to the Ivy League. For the first time this season, the Ivy League will be playing a conference tournament on a location. This will be at TD Garden in Boston, Massachusetts. We have 8 teams here, of course, Brown, Columbia, Cornell, Dartmouth, Harvard, Pennsylvania, Princeton, and Yale. The reigning conference champions, Penn and Princeton, won the tournament. The favorites are Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Dartmouth. I like the Tigers, but I think that Harvard will take another tournament bid. Danny?
I think Harvard's going to win this conference. Harvard, they're usually a dark horse. They're always usually number 3 or number 4. So I think that Harvard would definitely benefit here, and they might win out this conference.
All right, we'll move on now to the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference, the MAAC. The conference is made up of American International, Canisius, Clarkson, Fairfield, Iona, Manhattan, Marist, Monmouth, Niagara, Quinnipiac, Ryder, St. Peter's, Siena, and Utica. The conference champion was the recently quite dominant Marist, who has won quite a few titles since their big tournament run back in 2016. Monmouth was the regular season champion. The Marist Red Foxes nabbed the tournament spot. The favorites are Marist and Monmouth, along with St. Peter's and Siena. I like the Peacocks. I think that they've been bubbling under for a little while. Those in the know about the MAAC have been waiting for this team to capitalize on their potential, and I think they do it this year. Danny?
Give me St. Peter's as well. St. Peter's, they are a really good dark horse. They are always looking in, and sometimes they always pull off a magical little season from time to time. So I think maybe this year might be their magic time.
The MAAC, the MAAC tournament, is at Boardwalk Hall in Atlantic City. We'll move on to the MEAC, Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, one of 2 HBCU conferences, of course, in the Division 1. Currently sitting at 14 members: Bethune-Cookman, Coppin State, Delaware State, Florida A&M, Hampton, Howard, Maryland Eastern Shore, Morgan State, Norfolk State, North Carolina A&T, North Carolina Central, Savannah State, South Carolina State, and Winston-Salem. If you remember, actually, that if you remember last season, they had two other members, Kentucky State and Virginia State, who had been members since 2019. It was either 2019 or 2020. They had been members since. However, they both left. We'll talk about them later. The reigning regular season champions in the MEAC are Hampton. They won the tournament as well. The favorites this season are Hampton, Norfolk State, NC Central, and South Carolina State. I like the Spartans to once again return to the NCAA tournament. Danny?
Yeah, for me, I'm gonna say it's Norfolk. Norfolk State. They're usually number two. They are really good in basketball, especially in the MEAC and the HBCU level. So give me Norfolk State to win this con.
All right. The conference championship, the tournament is at Lawrence Joel Veterans Memorial Coliseum in Winston-Salem. We'll move on to the MAC, the Mid-American Conference. Akron, Ball State, Buffalo, Central Michigan, Eastern Michigan, Kent State, Marshall, Miami, Ohio, Northern Illinois, Ohio, Toledo, Western Michigan, and Youngstown State. The Youngstown State Penguins, who have had quite a difficult time in MAC football, if you've seen the if you've seen the 2KU updates, or if you've seen the chat on Discord. However, they have done much better in basketball. They're the reigning regular season champions. The tournament championship was won by Kent State. Those two are your favorites, as well as Marshall and Akron. I like the Penguins to punch in their first conference championship since joining the MAC. Danny?
Give me. I think it's gonna be Kent State. I think they're gonna repeat as maybe tournament champions, and they might win out this conference.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on now to the Missouri Valley, another mini power, even more so a power now, as a lot of teams in this conference have had amazing years. Loyola, Illinois had a title not too long ago, a national title. Right in front of them. They're the reigning tournament champions. The conference regular season champion was Creighton. It's those two, Wichita State and Northern Iowa, that are your four favorites for the Missouri Valley Championship this season. The conference is made up of Bradley, Butler, Creighton, Drake, Evansville, Illinois State, Indiana State, Loyola, Illinois, Missouri State, Northern Iowa, St. Louis, Southern Illinois, Western Illinois, and Wichita State. My favorite this season is going to be it's going to be Wichita State. They were this close to beating an Illinois team that was a 2 seed in the tournament last year, and they would have had a great run even further, or if they managed to get a win there. I like the Shockers to pull off a result that wouldn't be too shocking here. Though another team I watch out for that's not in those four, Butler, they've been waiting for their big moment for quite some time now, and they want to see if they can finally capitalize. Danny?
Yeah, I'm also going to agree with you. Give me the Shockers. The Shockers, they are usually a really good team. I do think they might be able to win out this conference, and I think they might be able to do well.
Mm-hmm. Let's move on. Actually, before we do, we got to mention this is the Scott Trade Center in St. Louis. Of course, this is Arch Madness. We'll move on to the Mountain West. In its 11-team form, as previously mentioned, the 3 teams scheduled to join the conference have not become full members. The members that are full are Air Force, Boise State, BYU, Colorado State, UNLV, New Mexico, San Diego State, TCU, Utah, Utah State, and Wyoming. The reigning regular season champions and the tournament champions were the San Diego State Aztecs. The current favorites this season are San Diego State, UNLV, Utah State, and New Mexico. I like the Aztecs to repeat once again. They just had a dominant performance in the Mountain West last season, and I think that they can move on once again, trying to avenge their loss in the first round of the tournament to a inferior UMass squad. Danny?
Give me San Diego State as well. I think they might win this conference, but don't be surprised about UNLV if they do a little bit of a revenge tour against San Diego State. So give me San Diego State to win, but I think UNLV will keep it close.
The Mountain West tournament is in American West Arena or America West Arena in Phoenix. We'll move on to the Northeast Conference with a new member this season. The NEC, the reigning champions in regular season, was St. Francis of Pennsylvania. The tournament champion was Wagner. Has been a dominant force for some time in this conference. This season we have the Brooklyn Bulldogs, the Bryant Bulldogs, the CCNY City College of New York Beavers, new from D2, the Central Connecticut State Blue Devils, the Fairleigh Dickinson Knights, those two LIU schools I mentioned before, LIU Brooklyn Blackbirds and the LIU Southampton Sharks, the Mercyhurst Lakers, the Mount St. Mary's Mountaineers, the Robert Morris Colonials, the St. Francis New York Terriers, the St. Francis Pennsylvania Red Flashes, the Sacred Heart Pioneers, and the Wagner Seahawks. My favorite team here is Wagner. Danny?
I think I agree with you. Give me Wagner to win out this conference. I believe Wagner will perform really well, and they will continue to surprise everyone.
All right, we'll move on from there to the Ohio Valley. Actually, before we do, the NEC tournament is at XL Center in Hartford. We'll move on now to the Ohio Valley, who lost two members actually in Birmingham Southern and Jacksonville State. This year, though, they added a member. The Austin Peay Governors, the Belmont Bruins, the Eastern Illinois Panthers, the Eastern Kentucky Colonels, Morehead State Eagles, the Murray State Racers, Sanford Bulldogs, Southern Illinois Edwardsville Cougars, the Southeast Missouri State Redhawks, the Tennessee Martin Skyhawks, the Tennessee State Tigers, and the Tennessee Tech Golden Eagles are welcoming a new member this season, the Southern Indiana Screaming Eagles. The reigning regular season and tournament champions were, of course, the ever-dominant Murray State. However, the Racers have been dominant for a decade. However, they've had some teams now vying, trying to nab a consistent spot at their throne. Belmont and Morehead State are great examples. Austin Peay as well has been performing extremely well. Though I don't know if it's well enough. I think the Racers managed to get a big enough distance between them and the rest of the conference to once again nab a big spot. Danny?
Yeah, give me. I'm gonna really say Murray State might win this out, but I believe Belmont might keep it close.
Mm-hmm. The Ohio Valley tournament is at Ford Center in Evansville, Indiana. We'll move on to the Pac-10. Arizona, Arizona State, California, Oregon, Oregon State, Stanford, UCLA, USC, Washington, and Washington State. The reigning regular season champions were Arizona. The tournament champions were the Oregon Ducks, who made the NCAA tournament by the skin of their teeth. The favorites this season are Arizona, USC, Oregon, and UCLA. I like the Trojans to win the conference. I think that they've performed extremely well, especially in an unforgiving tournament. Danny?
Yeah, me give me Arizona to win this. I believe they're going to perform really well. They're always performing well in basketball. So give me a Wildcat.
Mm-hmm. USC had a spot in the Elite Eight last season. The tournament is at Staples Center in Los Angeles, California. We'll move on to the Patriot League. The tournament is in Verizon Center at Washington, D.C. The conference is made up of the American Eagles, Army West Point Black Knights, the Baltimore Super Bees, look them up, the Bucknell Bison, the Case Western Reserve Spartans, the Catholic University Cardinals, Colgate Raiders, Holy Cross Crusaders, the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays, who are a new member from the America East, the Lafayette Leopards, the Lehigh Mountain Hawks, the Loyola Maryland Greyhounds, and the Navy Midshipmen. The reigning regular season champions were Colgate. The tournament champions, traveling to their first NCAA tournament in nearly 50 plus years, was Army. The tournament favorites this year are Lehigh, Colgate, Bucknell, and American. I like the Bison to continue a dominant streak in the Patriot League. Danny?
Give me Colgate. Colgate, they're always going to be a really good team in this conference, and I believe here they're going to maybe take back the crown and win the tournament, I believe. Or the Patriot tournament.
Yeah, we'll move on. The SEC. To some, it just means more. We'll move through the members: Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Kentucky, LSU, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Tulane, and Vanderbilt. The regular season reigning champions were Kentucky. The tournament champions were the Tennessee Volunteers. The favorites this season are Kentucky, Tennessee, Auburn, and Alabama. I would also give mention to Florida, who's trying to rebound after a disappointing 2021. My favorites in the conference here would actually be the Gators. I think that they bounce back in a huge way this season. Danny?
For me, give me Kentucky. Kentucky, they're always going to be one of the premier powerhouses in the country. So give me Kentucky to win and probably to win the championship tournament as well.
All right. The SEC tournament is at Bridgestone Arena in Nashville. We'll move on to the SoCon, the Southern Conference. Appalachian State, the College of Charleston, Chattanooga, Davidson, East Tennessee State, Furman, Georgia Southern, UNC Greensboro, the Citadel, VMI, Washington and Lee, Western Carolina, William & Mary, and Wofford are all here. The reigning regular season and tournament champions were a recent basketball power in Davidson. The Davidson Wildcats are joined by UNC Greensboro, Wofford, and the College of Charleston as your favorites to make the big dance. I think that the Wildcats are most likely going to make the tournament, whether they win this conference or not. I think they have an amazing season this year. But I actually don't like them to win the title. I like Wofford here. Danny?
And give me give me UNC Greensboro. They're always a really bold team, and they're always well-rounded, and I believe they could beat Davidson this year.
All right. The SoCon tournament is at Harrah's Cherokee Center in Asheville, North Carolina. Moving on to the Southland Conference. We're almost there at the end, I promise. The reigning regular season champions here are Stephen F. Austin, who have been a very big power in basketball and recently in football, if you've been following. However, they did not make the tournament. They had their spot slipped in by Texas A&M Corpus Christi, making their first ever NCAA tournament appearance. And boy, what they did with it. They had a huge upset over the number 3 seeded Kentucky, only falling in the second round to USC. The Corpus Christi is now the favorites to take the conference. Stephen F. Austin is second. Abilene Christian is third, and McNeese State is fourth on the standings. The Southland Championship is in Toyota Center. The members being Abilene Christian, Central Arkansas, Incarnate Word, Lamar, McNeese, Nichols State, Northwestern State, Southeastern Louisiana, Hardin Simmons, a new full-time member who left from the Great West. They're joined also by West Texas A&M, who joined from the Great West to become full Southland members. Sam Houston State, Stephen F. Austin, and Texas A&M Corpus Christi. I would say the Lumberjacks or the Islanders, but I actually like the Wildcats of Abilene Christian to take home the Southland crown. Danny?
Give me the Islanders to win this one. I mean, they're always going to be a good team, and they always perform well in this conference, surprisingly. So I think they're going to win out the tournament, I believe.
All right. We'll move on. The Toyota Center's in Houston, by the way, to the Summit League. Another favorite of mine, personally. We have the Augustana Vikings, the Chicago State Cougars, the Denver Pioneers, Lindenwood Lions, the Missouri Kansas City Roos, the Nebraska Omaha Mavericks, North Dakota Fighting Hawks, the North Dakota State Bison, Northeastern Illinois Golden Eagles, the Oral Roberts Golden Eagles, St. Thomas Tommies, who are in their third year as Summit League members, the South Dakota Coyotes, and the South Dakota State Jackrabbits. The reigning regular season and tournament champions were Oral Roberts, who had a very good 2020. However, their 2021 was not as dominant, but they managed a conference championship out of it regardless. The favorites this season: Oral Roberts, North Dakota State, Chicago State, and Denver. I like I like Oral Roberts. I think that they are the favorite to win, but don't be surprised to see a little team called Missouri Kansas City have a very good performance this year. Danny,
Give me the Bison to win this one. I believe they're able. They're going to be the ones to knock out Oral Roberts, and I believe they're going to end up on top here.
the Bison, of course. Danny's talking about North Dakota State. For those uninitiated, the Summit League tournament is at Denny Sanford Premier Center in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We'll move on now to the Sun Belt Conference, who has a new member this season, Coastal Carolina, joining from the Big South, becoming a full Sun Belt member. The conference is made up of Arkansas State, Arkansas Little Rock, Coastal Carolina, as mentioned, FAU, FIU, Louisiana Lafayette, Louisiana Monroe, Middle Tennessee State, New Orleans, North Texas, South Alabama, Texas Arlington, Troy, and Western Kentucky. UT Arlington joined a couple seasons ago from the Southland Conference, becoming full-on Sunbelt or becoming partial Southland members. The reigning regular season champion was Arkansas Little Rock. The tournament champion ended up being Middle Tennessee State. The favorites are those two, along with Texas Arlington and New Orleans. Of the field here, I like the Trojans to get revenge and slip back into the tournament. Day.
Give me Texas Arlington to win. Texas Arlington, they're always going to be a pretty well team. They're always going to be competing strong in this conference and basketball in general. So I believe UTA will win the conference here.
The Sun Belt Championship is in New Orleans, of course, at Smoothie King Center. We'll move on to the SWAC, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, the second HBCU conference in the Division One. Adding a new member this season, we have the Alabama A&M Bulldogs, Alabama State Hornets, Alcorn State Braves, the Arkansas Pine Bluff Golden Lions, the Grambling State Tigers, the Jackson State Tigers, the Mississippi Valley State Delta Devils, the Morris Brown Wolverines, look them up, the Prairie View A&M Panthers, the Southern Jaguars, the Texas Southern Tigers, and the new member from Division II, the Tuskegee Golden Tigers. They're from Tuskegee, Alabama, of course. The reigning regular season champions and tournament champions were the ever-dominant Texas Southern, and I think they swap in another title. I actually did make a mistake on the SWAC, typing out the SWAC championship favorites. It's supposed to be Southern, BR, and Texas Southern. Alabama A&M and Alcorn State are also championship favorites. I like the Texas Southern Tigers once again to capture a SWAC championship. Danny?
I agree with you. Texas Southern, they are clearly the best team in this conference, and I believe they're going to make a run again to win it.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I have a game on, and I saw someone get hit in the face by a basketball. Anyway, the Sunbelt not the Sunbelt Championship, that's a mistake on my part. The SWAC Championship is at Bartow Arena in Birmingham, Alabama. We'll move on now to the new conference of the 2022 season, the Trans-American Athletic Conference. It's a new one this season, and the conference plays their tournament out of Hirsch Memorial Coliseum at Shreveport. The conference is made up of a bunch of teams who defected from other places. The first teams here, we have the Birmingham Southern Panthers, the Centenary Gentlemen, the Dallas Baptist Patriots, the Jacksonville State Gamecocks, the Liberty Flames, the North Alabama Lions, and the Tarleton State Texans, all teams who are tournament eligible this season, joined by Loyola, Louisiana, and Texas A&M Commerce, both from Division II. The current regular season champion, of course, doesn't exist. The favorites this season are Liberty, Jacksonville State, Centenary, and Tarleton State. I think that by far the best team here is going to be Liberty. Of course, they're only going to be here this one season. They'll be moving to the Conference USA next year, but I think they take the Trans-American Athletic Conference, the TAAC's first crown with them. Danny?
Yeah, give me Liberty as well. I believe Liberty, they really want to get a good, stable win here before going to the most superior Conference USA. So give me Liberty to win, and they'll be going to the Conference USA with the TAAC championship.
We'll have to watch the TAAC as well. If you saw a previous 2K weekly stream, you know that they'll be expanding with teams like with teams like Mercer and East Tennessee State, and another school who we'll get to later. We'll move on now to the West Coast Conference, the second to last we'll be talking about here. Of course, best known for a certain class of teams from this conference. You have the Gonzaga Bulldogs, of course, Loyola Marymount, Pacific, Pepperdine, Portland, Portland State, St. Mary's, San Diego, San Francisco, and Santa Clara. The Gonzaga Bulldogs won the regular season tournament and were heavy favorites to take home. They won the regular season title. They were heavy favorites to take home the tournament, but they were stunned in the conference championship game by San Francisco, who punched their ticket to the big dance last season. The favorites, of course, are Gonzaga and St. Mary's, joined by Loyola Marymount and the San Francisco Dons from before. I like Gonzaga, of course, to repeat one more time. Danny?
Give me Gonzaga. I believe they're going to really do well here, and I believe they're going to compete strong.
Yeah. The West Coast tournament is at Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle. It moved from Las Vegas a couple seasons ago. We'll move now to our final conference, of course, the WAC. The WAC is made up of two new teams this season. The West Coast lost Seattle last year. They moved to the WAC. CSU Bakersfield moved to the WAC from the Big West. Joining them will be, of course, the Cullen Payton Coyotes. We'll explain them more later. The Fresno State Bulldogs, the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors, the Idaho Vandals, the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs, a non-football member of the conference, though potentially a future full football member. We'll have to see on that. The Nevada Wolfpack, the New Mexico State Aggies, San Jose State Spartans, Texas State Bobcats, Tulsa Golden Hurricane, UTEP Miners, and UTSA Roadrunners. Tulsa is leaving next season for the Conference USA, as previously stated. The reigning regular season champion was Nevada, who made it into the first four as an at-large bid. The tournament champions were San Jose State, punching a long-awaited berth to the tournament. The 2022 championship favorites this year are Nevada, New Mexico State, Seattle, and CSU Bakersfield. New Mexico State had a good performance in the NIT, which could be a reason for them to win this conference. I like the Aggies to take the win in this conference. Danny?
I agree with you. The Aggies, they are always one of the best teams in college football, so I believe they might win this conference and go to the big March Madness tournament.
Mm-hmm. The WAC tournament is in Paradise, Nevada at Orleans Arena in the Las Vegas area. We'll move on now to the four independent schools in the Conference USA. Or not the Conference USA, pardon me. In the NCAA. We have four independents, two of which are new to college basketball this season and will have homes by 2023. Currently, we'll talk about the first one, which needs the least explanation. The Lemoyne Dolphins, who are new to college basketball this season, or at least to D1. They were a pretty formidable force in Division II. They're based out of Syracuse, New York. The university was founded in 1946. Their home is Ted Grant Court with about 2,600 capacity. They joined Division I this season. They were a member of the Northeast 10. They are going to be in the MAAC next year. Here, we'll look at the two. We have the two defectors from the MEAC from last season, Kentucky State and Virginia State. Starting with Kentucky State, they're out of Frankfort, Kentucky. They play out of the 2,750-seated William Exum Center. They were a member of the MEAC from 2018 to 2021. They came from the CIAA. That's a mistake, actually. They're from the SIAC. Pardon me. As for Virginia State, they're from Ettrick, Virginia. They play out of the VSU Multipurpose Center, which has over 5,000 capacity. They joined Division I in 2017, along with Kentucky State. They were a CIAA member. They played the MEAC for the same amount of time as the Thoroughbreds. The Trojans and the Thoroughbreds have not announced a conference for 2023. And the fourth member of this is a fictional school, the Georgia Fairburn Pandas, UGF, founded in 1956, out of Fairburn, Georgia. They play in the Adama Dome, which is of course, a football stadium. They joined Division One this season. They were a Peach Belt member up until 2021. They'll be playing in the TAAC in 2023. Danny, thoughts on the Independents?
Yeah, there's a lot of these teams. They might be like a little bit of a bottom feeder teams, but I'm sure they're all gonna be really competitive and really want to fight against each other.
All right, we'll move on here. Of course, independents don't have an auto bid like the conferences do. In order to make the conference tournament, you would need to qualify as an at-large, which is very rare in today's day and age. We'll move on now to talking about the three fictional schools we have here in Division One, starting with Cullen Payton. You probably heard this spiel already in the college basketball or in the college football 2KU video. They're out of Caldwell, Idaho. Well, their home stadium is Vitalized Stadium, much like the Idaho Vandals. They have a multi-purpose venue of a dome, though they do have a new basketball arena coming in 2023. They play out of the WAC. They joined Division One in 1987. They were a Division One. They played out of the Big Sky from 87 to 2010. They joined the WAC in 2011 and have been a member of that conference ever since. Of course, they have rivals with Idaho, Idaho State, and Montana. We'll move on now to another independent school, the Dave Show Truckers. The Truckers are based out of Orlando, Florida. They play at the DSU CCU Arena with 3,000 capacity. They play in the Atlantic Sun Conference. They joined Division One in 1980. They joined the A-Sun in 1983, since then they've formed hearty rivalries with other Florida schools, UCF, USF, Jacksonville, and Mercer, though their biggest rival is nearby Stetson out of DeLand. These two joined the conference about the same time, and every year it seems like these two have gone at each other, no matter what. The Truckers, though, are looking ambitious. They have had some great challenges against UCF and USF as well. And the third fictional school here, we have the Georgia Fairburn Pandas, UGF, of course. Based out of Fairburn, Georgia, they play from the Adama Dome, which has 3,000 for basketball, but of course it's a football venue, so it could be expanded. They're an NCAA independent. They'll be a TAAC member in 2023. Joined Division One in 2022. They have potential rivalries with Georgia State, as well as future conference opponents Mercer and North Alabama, and Kennesaw State could be a potential rival as well. As previously mentioned, we join the TAAC next season. Of course, credit to not the expert for the creation of this team. We'll move on now to talking about the NCAA tournament this season. We're going to be announcing the sites for each tournament game. The top two for each category are the regionals. The super regionals are the third on the bottom. The regionals for the East bracket will be at TD Garden in Boston. The host is Boston University. The PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh will be hosting by the Duquesne Dukes as well. The regional will be at the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey, hosted by the Seton Hall Pirates. Move on to the West group. The Chesapeake Energy Arena at Oklahoma City, hosted by the Big 12 Conference, and the SAP Center in San Jose, California, hosted by San Jose State, will be your regionals. Your super regional is at AT&T Center in San Antonio, hosted by UTSA, of course. We'll move on from there to the Midwest bracket. Hosts this year will be the Nationwide Arena in Columbus, hosted by Ohio State, the Pfizer Forum in Milwaukee, hosted by Wisconsin Milwaukee, and the United Center in Chicago, hosted by Loyola, Illinois. And the last bracket here, we'll have the South bracket. The regionals will be at Smoothie King Center in New Orleans, hosted by the Sun Belt Conference, the Richmond Arena, hosted by VCU, and the Super Regional will be at FLA Live Arena in Sunrise. The host team will be the Miami Hurricanes. And we have one more thing to share: the national championship, the Final Four location this season. It will be in Las Vegas. Allegiant Stadium will host the Final Four this year. Your April 2nd through April 4th will have streams throughout tournament season, so stay tuned for those. looking over all of the teams we talked about, Danny, who are your favorites to potentially win a national championship?
For me, I think VCU might do a good run. I'm gonna say UConn might have a very impressive performance as well. Give me Kentucky and maybe give me North Carolina.
Hmm. I like. I think I would like to see. I think we could have Indiana as one. I like my big underdog. I could see Arkansas having a huge run. Indiana, Arkansas, Virginia, and Wichita State. I think that would be the four I would predict for the championship this season. I hope you all will enjoy. We'll have occasional basketball streams. However, I don't know if we're going to be doing them as common as we did the football streams. We'll have other events to look forward to as well. Don't forget to stay tuned on this channel for other 2K Universe videos such as this one, where we'll explain just a little bit more about the world of 2K Universe. Well, we're gonna take off right now. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.